Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. The Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts is proudly sponsored by the Global Wellness HQ community. It's an online membership group where we meet, we share ideas, we share insights, and we all work together and help one another discover our own personal wellness journeys. If you'd like to join us, you can easily click the link below or scan the QR code, and we love hearing your stories. So we hope to see you in the community. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. In today's episode, I'm really excited to talk to Laura Jessica Walker. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Now, for my listeners, they're going to notice that there's a slight accent. Would you mind telling our audience where you and I are chatting from today?
Yeah. So I am in the UK, down right at the bottom in Cornwall. So the little bit that sticks out in the UK, that's where I am, by the coast.
I love it. Well, let's get started. So, first of all, just tell us a little bit about who you are and who you work with, and then what you do for your clients.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm best way to start, I guess, is that I'm going to go for the for the full life story, but I'll make it really quick. So I'm a mental health nurse by trade. So that's how I started. And I've done many things. One of those being working with people with dementia, which I'll talk about in a bit. But I've all the way through that, I've been absolutely obsessed with positive psychology. So at this juncture in my life and my business, I am working as a coach, as a mental health coach for leaders. So that's either CEOs or directors, founders of organizations that are built to affect change in the world, either for people or planet. And I concentrate on working specifically with burnout. And the reason that I do that is because I experienced a massive burnout when I was CEO of my own company and pushing that forward, where I didn't look after myself, essentially. I didn't do all the things that I know I should do as a mental health nurse. And if you can do that when you have all of the textbook and the years of training and you still manage to burn out, it felt like I needed to study it a bit harder. And I put together a process that I now take my clients through to ensure that they don't get to that point, or if they have got to that point, that they make a really good recovery.
I love it. Now, I'm going to circle back because burnout, I think, is a term that a lot of people toss around lightly. I have a sneaky suspicion you actually have a proper definition for it based on your years of experience. So, how would you describe burnout? And no, let me rephrase that, because I think the first question is, what are some of the signs of burnout? And then define burnout.
Yeah, so some of the signs of burnout that you will find is that people will become much more snappy with the people that they're close to. They will have trouble concentrating, so they're much more likely to be procrastinating. They will start many tasks but won't finish most of them or any of them. Yeah, and it's interesting when you say that, because one of the things that we said before we came on is that I also know, and I'm going to add this, that I have ADHD, which I latterly found out, which makes it really difficult for me to recall things like that, which is like, what's your definition? And I haven't got my notes in front of me. So I'm just going to hold my hands up and say, I know that I could do that, but I can't do it right now. Is
I
that
love
okay?
it. That is okay. And you know, One of the things I would say about burnout is it's really easy to diagnose after the fact. It's really hard to be self-aware and say, um, it takes a lot for somebody to say, I've been snapping at people lately, or, you know,
Yeah.
and here's the thing, I've been through clinical burnout, and I can say this because I've been diagnosed. I've done it 3 or 4 times in my life. And every
Mhm.
time you're like, I'm too busy to slow down, I've got to get this done. Like, we don't recognize, and for me, I think the first time I went through burnout, I was 18, and I was working full time, 40-hour a week. Plus, I was going to high school and I was getting top grades. Um, I just pushed myself, and at the age of 18, I got really sick, and the doctors could not diagnose anything. And then somebody said, "Well, let's back up and look at what you were doing when this started." And they were like,
Yeah.
nobody can do that. And that, to me, I was, dealing with OCD, I was dealing with perfectionism. All of those things
Mhm.
kind of turned into burnout.
Yeah.
And looking back, it took me years to recover. So that's why I wanted to have you on the show, is let's talk about burnout. And, I'm not
Mm.
looking for the clinical textbook definition. I'm just looking at, what are the early warning signs that somebody could look at a loved one and say, maybe you need some help. Or we can
Yeah.
look in the mirror and say, maybe there's something going on.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because what I can tell you is also my experience, and two sorts of experiences that I think are really helpful that I tell a lot. And one was when I was 19 years old. So I was a mental health nurse trainee or student nurse. And I was working in acute psychiatry. So I was working within an inpatient unit where we looked after some very ill patients. And I always remember there was a woman there who was in her 40s, and I was one of her nurses. And I couldn't understand why she was in the space that she was mentally, because from the outside it was like she had everything. She was that, really successful business leader. She, had the lovely car, she had, everything, and yet was just not functioning. Now at 19, and just in it's sort of starting my career, I was learning about, depression and anxiety. And she really, really stuck in my head. And unfortunately, really sadly, she took her life. And at 19, that really, really hit me. One, because I was on the team that was looking after her. She was getting better, and she'd left. And it was a big, big shock. And then when you fast forward my life, and I find myself in my 40s, and I am that business owner, and I have got all those things. And there I was. And I remember this moment of where I couldn't function. And I was sat there and I was thinking, oh, it feels like I've come full circle. And I know now what she was experiencing. A brain that just would not function properly. I was unable to read. I couldn't even, like, if my phone made any noise, it would cause me absolute anxiety. So to go from somebody who was running a business with 25 staff, with my co-founder, everything was fine. If you'd have asked me 2 weeks before that, how are things? I'd have said to you, they're great. They're great. But actually, they were not great. And I was not functioning well at all. And I think that's the thing about burnout, isn't it? Is that you go faster and faster until you can't go go any faster, and it all stops.
And honestly, I think my biggest, I'm stubborn. It took me a while to learn the lessons. Obviously, the fact that I repeated it, um, you know, when you're going towards burnout, you're going faster and faster towards that big event, and you think, I don't have time to slow down.
Mm.
My advice to you is you don't have time to be burnt out, because once you burn out, it's a tough place. There's no shortcuts back. You've got to unplug, you've got to stop, and you've got to heal. And
Yeah.
I would say if you don't have time to slow down, you definitely don't have time to burn out. Is that fair?
It's totally true. And that's exactly what I teach my clients now. As you can imagine, I'm always evangelical about it. It's like, we got to get this right because I know what happens. And I think I've got, sort of keyed into that earlier experience at 19 that I now understand so much better than I did at the time with my own experience, coupled with my own experience, makes me incredibly passionate to be able to stop people getting to that point. And we're seeing so much more burnout now because of the lockdowns, because of everything that's going on in the world. People are struggling, but seem to think they just have to keep going, and we must change that. This
Yeah.
whole being busy, being busy is a good thing. I don't buy it, and we have to stop it.
I love it. So we talked about the negative side of it. What are some things? Because here's the thing: I firmly believe if people knew how to avoid burnout, they would. So, what are
Yeah.
some actionable things people listening to this can look at and actually do to first of all self care, but then maybe slow down a little. What are your top tips when you work with somebody?
Yeah, so the first thing that I do when I meet with somebody is the very first session is we set non-negotiables. So 3 daily self-care non-negotiables that they will work on from the moment that they meet me. And I'm really strong on it. They're accountable to me. And I really encourage, if you don't have a coach, to find an accountability partner and set those non-negotiable habits. And those habits can be really personal to you. So we know that there are things that we can do that are well researched, like exercise and getting outside and, all of those things. But also there's this element of it being personal to you. So for an example, I love to play the guitar. When I was burning out, I didn't have time to play the guitar. I wasn't going to make any time to play the guitar because everything else was more important. So that stayed right at the bottom. I barely picked up my guitar for 2 years.
Which
Um,
ironically is the thing that probably allows you to go fast, is that centered time, right?
yeah, it is absolutely that. So it's finding those things. It's finding the things that bring you joy, but also the things that you know are good for you. So it might and are simple, because obviously if you're going to do it every day, 3 things every day, they need to be simple. We can't be looking at things that are going to take an hour or so. So things like drinking enough water, that's such a simple one, and none of us do it properly.
Yeah.
Having enough water to drink on our desk is not difficult. That's not a difficult thing. And yet, I still have clients that say, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to drink water. Come on, let's do this.
Well, and Laura, I'm
Just
just going to say one of the most common, I talk to people from all areas of wellness, and there's a theme. Everybody says drink more water. So I just want to underline that because I think, I know the Brits like their tea. I know Americans like their coffee, and, the world likes soda, but we need pure, filtered, clean water that it helps our brain. It helps us process. There's so many reasons for it. And yet it's the number one thing people tell me they don't have time for. And I'm like, how do you not have time for water?
it's again one of my big passions, and again, from my background of working in dementia, it's so important. If our brains are not hydrated, if we, I think it's about, what if we're 1% hydrated, we lose 10% of brain function, right? So that is one thing
Yeah.
that we can do that's so simple, that helps us to function better. So, and particularly if you're stressed, even more important. So simple. Yeah, so water is one that I really encourage. And then, the other two non-negotiables can be anything that makes people feel better, that means that they're going to take some time and space out. So for example, mine is meditation. I meditate twice a day, and so that's one of my non-negotiables, as along with drinking water.
I love
um
it.
and then also you can have weekly non-negotiables as well. So one of mine is to get in the freezing cold sea, because I love it and it resets me.
Burr, I have shivers thinking about it, but our cold is different than your cold. There's a few
Yeah, your
degrees
cold is a
difference.
lot colder. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
there's
think I'd be that brave there.
yeah. I think I mentioned to you I had a friend who went under ice diving over the weekend, and I'm like, that doesn't even register as something I'd like to do. Now, if I may, I'm going to throw in one of my favorite things, and my non-negotiable is be present. And
Mm,
I'm a father first. That's my most important role. Then I'm a husband. But I see so many people that are out with their families, or my personal pet peeve is people who walk their dogs, and they're out walking with their dog, but they've got their phone in front of their face. It's like,
yeah.
I presume you have a dog because you like your dog. Why wouldn't you be present and notice the dog and pay attention to the dog, as opposed to reading whatever thing is getting your attention on social media? Um,
Mhm.
we, as a family, we take 30 minutes a day. We're no tech. We're just present, and I think being
Mm.
present is huge.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely massive. Otherwise we're missing it. We're missing life, aren't we? What are we here for?
Yeah,
And certainly, when I look back at when I was working incredibly hard, that I missed that. I missed being present. I would come home, I would juggle everything with the kids and everything, and I can remember catching myself putting my daughter to bed, and I had my phone in my hands and I was sorting out an email, and it was a defining moment for me of what the hell am I doing.
yeah,
That's more important than this. you know um but when we're stressed, that's what we're doing, is pushing and pushing and pushing, because it feels like the most important thing. And certainly, we were running a social enterprise at the time, so that there were lots of issues around chasing funding, and it all, deadlines, and all of that stuff.
yeah.
So
Everything's
yeah.
urgent. And I'm just going to go out on a limb. If everything around you is urgent, you're probably pushing to burnout. Like, we need that balance. A friend of mine uses the analogy, a lot of people, they're busy, busy, busy. It's like they're breathing out all the time. At
Yeah.
some point, the organism collapses because you're
Mhm.
not breathing in. So we need in, out. The world has seasons. So
Yeah.
I love it. Now, I know you work with successful entrepreneurs who are probably trying to get more out of life. I would bet most people come to you not with the statement of, I want to avoid burnout, because that feels a little, but somebody's going to come to you. They're going to say, I really need help. Um,
Yeah.
what does it look like to work with you? First of all, I love the non-negotiable part. So anybody who's looking at talking to Laura, you need to recognize, I'm pretty sure I can look her in the eye. She's dead serious about the non-negotiable. Uh,
Yeah.
but tell us a little bit about, what it looks like to work with you.
Yeah. So, and I work in different ways. So I have, you can work on a one-to-one with me, and I also have a group program and a membership program, which is a real sort of low cost, so that anybody can come and sort of be part of it, and learn how to have these healthy habits. And all of my work is based on my restore method. So basically, restore stand the different letters in restore stand for different elements of that. So the first part is reboot and reset, which is where we look at the non-negotiables that I've just talked about. Then we go on to elevate, and that's looking at those things that you absolutely love. So for, like I said to you, that for me, that's getting in the sea, making sure that we've got those in our life. What can we do to raise our energy? Because we all know what we can do. For some people it's singing, for some people it's playing an instrument or dancing, but making sure that we've got that, and that we can use it at the time when those red flags are flying, because those are the times we may not feel like singing and dancing, but that's exactly what we should be doing, is shutting everything down and doing the fun bit. And I call those my lifters. So getting people to use their lifters. And then the next thing is safety check. Now this is really interesting, because this is probably the basic part of my work, which is around, you will know this, that most of the things that we do are unconscious. So a lot of the reasons why people are burning out is because they've got this unconscious reel running in their head that they don't even know is there. And that is pushing them for a reason. So a good example of that is I was working with a man who was a business owner, and he was saying to me, I'm working all the time. He said, I've got to tell you that I wake up in the middle of the night when my kids and my wife's asleep so that I can sneak downstairs and get some work done because I know that they don't want
Yeah.
me to work. So he was actually taking a night shift as well, just working so much. And what we did in this stage when we looked at safety check is we looked at, okay, what's driving this? What's keeping you safe? What's going on here? So we unpicked it all. And for this particular gentleman, we found out that he had, in his childhood, he had a very, very unpredictable father. And he needed to keep everything okay. And if everything was okay, he felt safe. And what he was doing is he was running that reel in his business. So, but he didn't need to do that anymore because he was a grown up and he was safe. So what we basically did, we found that belief and then we bashed that out of the water. And that was the big moment for him, the massive breakthrough where he was like, I don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And then he came out of the whole process with taking weekends off. In fact, he took a Friday off, so he only worked 4 days a week after he finished with me, rather than working goodness how many hours. So that's the safety check element, which is the big part of the work, I think. Then we look at time, so we actually do a time audit to see what are you actually spending time doing, because I was very surprised when I did this and I thought all of the things that I did were really important, but actually very few of them were, and very few of them were actually creating me any results. So doing a proper time audit is really important to actually see, okay, so you have got time to go mountain biking actually, or you have got time to go swimming, but you didn't realize that you had that time because you were shoving it with busyness constantly. And then the final 3 is open heart, and that's all about pouring love in, self-compassion and kindness to ourselves. So I take them through processes to do that. The next one's red flags, and that's knowing what your red flags are, because I certainly didn't know what mine were. So know what they are. Know when you've got cortisol going around in your body and you're stressed. So getting to know your nervous system so well that any little tweak, anything that's coming up, you're catching that red flag straight away and going straight into your reboot and reset. And then final one, the E, is energy management. And that is about, the fact that we cannot, exactly what you said earlier, is we cannot breathe out constantly. We have to get that balance. We only have so much energy. So I like people to look at that as, okay, so what are you going to spend that energy on today? Because the last thing that you want is to have spent it all in your business and have no time for your family. So that's it. That's my restore method.
I love that. And honestly, we could do an entire session just on that acronym. And by the way, I love the fact that you cleverly created the acronym. I always design businesses around the acronym and then I find the words to fill it in. So I always appreciate the expertise it takes to simply state something as an acronym. So I just want to thank you. Now, the final question is probably the hardest one. Where can people go if they want to get to know you and maybe figure out if they want to work with you or not?
So I'm in a few places. So you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I'm always Laura Jessica Walker. So I'm quite easy to find on all those places. I am on YouTube as well. all of the socials you can find me, and you will probably find also that I do some stuff around ADHD too, because my son has ADHD, so we have become quite popular on TikTok, the two of us as well. So that's also under Laura Jessica Walker if you're interested in that. I don't know how that happened, but we seem to have gained many followers, just me and him talking. And we also do a podcast as well around parenting and families touched by ADHD.
I love it. So I'm going to encourage everybody to check it out. Laura, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with me here.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.